This is a lecture. We're calling them dog talks, but basically I've really been inspired by my mentors over the years, and recently I've had the opportunity to go out and see Michael Ellis again lately after a bunch of years, and they're doing a course and a series of these like seminars or symposiums, they're calling them, and they're called kinology, okay? Which is basically coming to the thought that dog training, as it were, is a really simplistic term to define everything that you really need to know about dogs in order to be successful in the work. And so dog training itself, and saying I'm a dog trainer, as we know, anybody can say they're a dog trainer, and to be truly excellent at it, to really rise above, I think that you need a much broader understanding, and you can get that through the study of kinology, which is basically just study of everything dog, right? So the my current mentor, professor, you might call it, is Dr. Stuart Hilliard, and he is kind of at the forefront of this kinology kind of movement, and he's working with Michael Ellis, who's my direct mentor, and Forrest Mickey, who's one of my best friends, and they're kind of helping us to carry this forward. And so after visiting there, I said, man, I really need to be teaching people this stuff and working with people more that are professional, and so this is our opportunity to do that. I hope to be able to do this particular lecture many times, right? So also, this is a new lecture, so happy to hear afterward or whatever if you have some ideas or if things didn't make sense to you, or even throughout. Please just stop me anytime. And I'll try to get through it in a reasonable amount of time. So this is, it's sometimes kind of dense information, all right? So everybody can, here, how about you can grab one of these and kind of pass it on. This is just the first slide on a piece of paper here, because I really felt like this information was so important that you needed to be able to check back and see it throughout the presentation, right? This is probably the hardest part of classical conditioning and understanding the literature, okay? People get confused, they see the letters, they see what you're gonna see throughout. If you're reading studies and you're reading literature on classical conditioning and on a lot of different behavior modification stuff, you're gonna see these letters, right? So you're gonna see US, UR, NS, CS, CR. You're gonna see them all over the place. And I'm gonna try to basically not just throw them out really quickly, because it takes, sometimes it takes people hours, sometimes it takes people weeks, sometimes it could take you months or years to actually get into the state where you can use them nonstop just in regular conversation. So you have a little cheat sheet, and we're going to go through them now, and I want you to please ask questions about them if they're confusing, okay? So the first one is what is called an unconditioned stimulus, and that'll be written here throughout this presentation, and you'll see it in literature if you go about finding your own research. And a US doesn't have to be conditioned. So it's something that triggers a natural response, something like food or pain, okay? So everywhere that I put it throughout this presentation, you're gonna see this turkey leg, okay? So just think food. For the most part, that's what we're talking about here. And so the stimulus is food, and it triggers a natural response. For us in this situation, if we look back to our first page here, spit and twitches, it's something that triggers a spit or twitch response. So that's where you get salivation or a flinch response. So it could be food. We're going to use food for most of our examples here. We're not talking about using pain for the most part. We'll talk about it a little bit, but it's going to be the same. You would plug in the pain in the same exact place in the equation. The unconditioned response is the response to the US. And it doesn't have to be taught. So you put food in the animal's mouth, they're like, this is great. You don't have to teach that. You don't have to condition that. They just know when I feel the texture of that food in my mouth, I start salivating, I love it. And the salivation and the I love it feeling, which is, you see our little dog who's like, yeah. He's a very excited dog. Our very excited dog there is having an unconditioned response. So nobody had to teach him. When he gets the food, he's like, oh, I'm happy, this is great, all right? So the next thing is a neutral stimulus, NS. All right, NS is going to be defined, or is going to be depicted in each one of these slides as a bell, okay? And if it has a CS on the bell, it's already been conditioned. So your neutral, okay, the neutral meaning completely, basically completely meaningless so far. So if I just do that for the first time and nobody's ever heard it before and I didn't pair anything with it, and that's, all right, cool. So that right there is my neutral stimulus. Now, if I condition that stimulus with a series of pairings, now I've gone food, food, food. Now it has been conditioned. So my neutral stimulus, the bell, the clicker, the marker, yes, right, has now been conditioned into my dog. And my dog will now have an unconditioned response in association to it. So that's where the big leap occurs. And that is called the conditioned response. So this is the goal, and basically having the dog, in our situation, I may as well just say dog all the time versus subject, right? So is having the dog understand that the CS, the conditioned stimulus, is going to result in a conditioned response. It's going to make me happy because I've paired it many, many, many times with food and so forth, okay? Just on these terms, it can be confusing, and if I'm saying them too, if I say CS, NS, and run through US and UR, just say, go back, I'm lost, right? Because a lot of times in my head, for the first many years of doing this, I would translate it in my head. I would see them written, and then I would say, conditioned stimulus. But now I see the CS, and I think of CS as just being the bell or the tone or the marker, right? So if I'm messing with those in your head, just say, oh, hold on. So just on this, does anybody have any more questions on that? Everybody's got it, perfect. They're just gonna rattle these bad boys off, huh? Okay, so we gotta pay homage here, okay? So if you are not familiar with Ivan Pavlov and his particular series of experiments, he was basically the father of classical conditioning or Pavlovian conditioning, and gave us all of these really, really incredible tools. His belief and what we can take from him is that classical conditioning is the simplest form of learning. Conditioning is learning. That's what it is. And it is potentially, I think, it seems to me to be the simplest form of it. It doesn't require a ton of intellect in a lot of situations. It just requires the understanding of cause and effect in a very short time frame, right? So he did that main study that everybody hears about, the salivatory response and the bells and things like that. He did that in the late 1800s. But he was doing studies based on classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning, for like 45 years. So if you look back in literature, you'll find all sorts of really, really cool studies that they did. And they did this study a lot of times. The ones that you hear about with, like, I guess they used like a large breed dog, like something, St. Bernards or something like that. I don't know. They were using these like large breed dogs, and they had extra salivatory response, and they had like a tube drilled in through the side of these dogs, like So then they had to keep them still in this crazy apparatus, and they're presenting the CS to them and then measuring their conditioned responses over time. It's a really, really cool experiment, but you'll find in the literature, if you read this stuff, a lot of it's not nice. So we have all these really great benefits that we've learned from these behavioral scientists over the years, and they were, not all of them, but a lot of them are like torturing kind of animals throughout their practice. So it makes me uncomfortable, right? So they're basically, I feel like even more so, it's important that we gather everything that we can from it. And if it's like, hey man, we're training dogs today and we're not using this information, and be like, hey man, 150 years ago they were torturing dogs for this information. Like, you better fucking use it. Like, you're doing a disservice to all the dogs that you meet if you're not, like taking all this information that we had learned through, by hook or by crook back in the day. And so as dog trainers, anyone who's interacting with a dog, right? Anyone who's conditioning things, we are in the business of changing NS's to CS's. So you're changing neutral stimulus to conditioned stimulus. That is what we're trying to do. That is the name of the game, and that's what you need to get good at if you want to be good at this. That's what you need to lean into, and there's a bunch of nuance to it that people don't know. Many people that are out there just clicking away, clicking their lives away, don't understand actually the how and the why behind it. And I believe that really will advance your ability to do it on a daily basis. If you understand the how and the why does it work? How does it work best? Okay, so has anybody seen images like this before? Not the rat, but believe it or not, AI made that rat. I asked Google to make me a rat, and it made that, and I think that rat looks pretty real to me. Not that real? Oh, how many fingers do rats have? 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 4 that I can see, yeah. I feel like AI is getting better at that. So anyway, on the right, has anybody seen kind of graphs like this before? Yes, Alexis, you've seen them? Okay. Nobody else? All right, awesome. So we'll go through each piece. This is your timeline. All right. When you see the bell with the CS, you can plug in your mind. You can plug in a clicker. You could plug in the word yes, something like that. You can imagine in a laboratory experiment, this is something like a tone, like meh, or something like that. When you see this rise right here, what that shows is that it's on. Okay, so this is your timeline. Time is passing. Make sense? Okay, and this isn't to scale. This could be 5 seconds. It could be 10 seconds, right? But that jump right there, and this is very common. You will see this in studies, and you'll see if you're looking at any kind of behavior modification or conditioning information, you're going to see these signs. And this is how they show you the timing, okay? The bottom is your US, okay? Unconditioned stimulus. That's your turkey leg, okay? So it's your treat. For all of the situations that we're talking about pretty much today, that's your treat, okay? So this goes on and off. Over here, this one, short delayed conditioning. We'll just go over that one. Short delayed conditioning. As the CS goes on, halfway through the CS, so say the CS is 2 seconds long, after 1 second, the US is presented. So say it's a tone that lasts 2 seconds, all right? So the tone goes, after 1 second, food comes out, tone stops, and then food goes away, all right? So it's overlap. The food is present for 2 seconds, the tone is on for 2 seconds, but after 1 second, it starts. Does that make sense? Okay, So that's called short delayed conditioning. Trace conditioning, there's a complete gap between your CS and your US delivery. So it's going to be food drop. Okay, so it happens after. Long delayed conditioning is a super long tone or a super long CS that precedes by 3 or 4 times the duration of the presence of the US. So that would be like, an example of this in your life might be when somebody's beeping you into a door. Imagine that, and you like hear it go off, and it goes, and you're like, oh, go get it quickly, right? There's also some yellow light stuff in here too. Like imagine like a yellow light when you see a yellow light. We can talk about that later. But depending on the length of delay, your response is dependent, your response is dependent on the length of the delay. Simultaneous conditioning happens at the same time, right? Click food, all at once. Got it? Yes, food. Okay, backward conditioning is when the US is presented and then the CS is presented. So food, click, food, click, food, click. All right. So of these, how often do you think about these in your dog training? Obviously, you didn't know these particular words here, but how often are you thinking about your timing and delivery? Real answers.
Very often. Every day. It's every response.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We think about them a lot then. Okay. So which ones are the most likely to create an ideal situation for learning? Which ones create learning in the fastest manner?
Short delayed and simultaneous.
Which?
Short delayed and simultaneous. Or
Okay.
trace.
Trace.
Yeah.
Trace.
You're supposed to give the marker and then give the food. And there's supposed to be a definition between the two. The reason being is if you do it on top of each other, then the marker means nothing. Am I right?
Some.
Okay.
Some, right? Okay. So which one is going to be the worst? Which one do you really want to stay away from?
Backward.
Okay. It's pretty obvious, right? They name it that. So yes, short delayed and trace are the best. Okay. But short delayed is noted as being even higher than trace. So with an overlap at the end. So the reason being that the animal has to use even less intellect because they literally are a bridge between nothing and something. The word happens, and then imagine if this is our timeline and you say a word here, you say the word yes, or you have a click or whatever it is, right? And then immediately following here, that is your US, right? So the food is presented as soon as the end of the word happens, right? But in trace, this delay here in between them is not, it's not noted how long that is. So the ideal situation is, say for example, I'm using a click. The other thing is, I'll explain this too, but if I'm using a click, if I'm clicking and then my hand is already moving in the beginning of the click, that's a problem. But if my hand is moving towards the end of the click, not a problem. But the closer this is, the end of this is, to an actual salient reward, the dog has food in their mouth, the better. What we get away with, the reason why we get away with trace conditioning so frequently in dog training, and why we need to, frankly, because say we're using a clicker, and my dog is over there and they exhibit a behavior that we want to mark. We go click, and the dog runs over to us to get a reward. Awesome. That's why we create them in the first place, is so that we can have that space there. But in terms of actual conditioning, right there is where it's going to happen the fastest. So a small overlap. So if I personally, and we'll talk about this a lot as we go, I use the word yes most frequently, and I start moving when I say S. So yes, move. Yes, move. Right? So instead of yes, move. Right? Now, oftentimes when I'm training someone who is brand new, I ask them to wait. So I ask them to do trace conditioning because I don't trust that their timing is going to be good enough to really do a short delayed conditioning. Two other super interesting things about this type of conditioning. In a backwards conditioning trial, they can see some results. There is some pairing. Anybody have a guess to why there would be some learning there? Again? No? Cameron?
If it's food in their mouth, they may still be chewing the food while.
It's like it's because it was sloppy, right? And the reason why is, so if you go to backward conditioning and then we do another trial right here and we do another trial right there, this CS is actually predicting this US, but then you're really going back to trace conditioning. So it's just like, it's going to be a sloppy version of trace conditioning, but they did see, so even when they did those trials, they would still get some response. The dog, or the rat, or whatever, was associating at some point that the sound did eventually get paired to it.
Does it work like short delayed conditioning based on your timing again? Because
This?
like, yeah, like what you were saying.
Versus trace?
Right.
Well, because it doesn't overlap though. So so short delayed is overlap.
But if you like feed them right away, like
Here, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well then it would definitely be, if you fed them after the CS, if you're feeding them after the CS, then it's trace. Yeah. If you were feeding them like right here and then pushing the button again, right here and push, then yeah, if there's an actual overlap, it would go to short delayed. So for the most part, we're going to be using these pretty much all the time. This one is just really interesting, I think also because what you find is in, like, say it's a 5-second tone. Over many trials, what actually starts to happen is the animal will respond to the tone, but not until later. So it'll be, yeah, they're like, oh, it just gets closer and closer to the onset of the US. So they actually start to time it. And they're like, it's on, they're like, I know the food's gonna be over there now, because they have an internal timer, just like you're like, it goes for another, it's gonna go for another couple seconds, right? Just like, you know, when the elevator door opens, like, you hear it and you're like, oh, better go quick now, right? If it was a long delayed one, you would still know, like, I got like 5 seconds and I'll just go in, right? And that's where that was what I was talking about, the yellow light. The longer it's on, the faster you know you need to go to get through it, right? If you're gonna go through it. Anyway, those are cool. You'll see them in the literature a lot. Any questions on those specifically? Conditioning types? All right, so this is, I had to make this because all the ones that I found were so bad, and it still might be bad, so please tell me if it doesn't make sense, okay? This is the response strength by number of trials. So how effective is our conditioning in the beginning is going to be measured by how fast that goes up in the beginning there. So in this acquisition phase, which we're going to call block 1, okay, we are pairing the NS and the US repeatedly to create a CS. All right. So simultaneously, a CS and a CR are like brought to life. So a conditioned stimulus, when it's actually been conditioned, is also going to pop up, right? Or the conditioned response is going to pop up at the same time as the conditioned stimulus. So now all of a sudden, my dog acts like he got a piece of food when he heard the click, right? And we've been successful. That's called acquisition. And the reason I put a little house in there is because that's where we live, okay? We are first blockers here, okay? We live in the first block of this. The failing and sometimes trialing and all sorts of stuff that goes on happens past that, second, third, fourth, right? But what we really want to do, and what training is, when we are actually actively manipulating the behavior, that's all happening in the first block here, all right? And does anybody, this right here, what we call that? You know what we call this right here? It's fun. The learning curve. Okay, so the learning curve, the rate of acquisition. And when I didn't know that, I didn't know that until very recently, and I was like, oh my God, it's the learning curve, right? It's amazing. Made me so happy. Okay, so who's heard about extinction? Okay, extinction is the period of time directly after you stop giving a US, basically. So if I stop feeding a click, stop feeding the click, how many reps does it take until the dog stops responding to the click, right? That's extinction. And when you get to this next part here, and these are not evenly spaced, this isn't to scale, right? But you get down here, there's this period called spontaneous recovery. I've heard it also called spontaneous relapse in other situations. But basically, the dog might respond to the click again, just like, who knows why, right? There's other interesting things about this, though, that are more along the lines of, single trial learning, or like punishment-based or negative reinforcement-based trials, where they actually have situations where they're resistant to extinction. So we've created a behavior that is so strong that the CR, conditioned response, will continue to be present when elicited by the CS for hundreds of trials after the reward or the correction has been completely eliminated. Okay, so I think basically over 600 trials, certain things. And these are mostly in shuttle box experiments. Anybody familiar with shuttle box experiments? Okay, so shuttle box is a little box where they have electrodes in the floor on one side of the box or the other, right? And then the dog or the animal, in this case it was probably beagles, right, will shuttle from one side of the box to the other when given a cue. Red light goes on, the floor is going to get hot, move to the other one, right? So there were situations where they taught these animals, sometimes in very, very short periods of time, sometimes 3, 5, 10 trials. And they went back and forth, particularly dogs were good at this, they were so good at this, 600 times with no punishment and very little fear as well. So they weren't showing that they were scared. They were like, yeah, I learned that, cool, light goes on, go over there, got it. I'll just do that forever. Why would I stop, right? And Dr. Hilliard actually, he tells a story, he calls it, why does Pat Nolan wear shoes, okay? The idea being that if I forgot something in my car and I realized that at nighttime, I said, man, I gotta go get this out of my car, I'm gonna slip on my flip-flops before I run outside. And that's because I know I have just performed as an avoidance response, right? I know that I might step on something in the parking lot or whatever, and so in order to avoid that, throw my shoes on, go outside. I'm not afraid of shoes. I'm not afraid of the parking lot. I'm not afraid of pebbles. It's just something that I do. It's something that's practiced and habituated, right? So on the subject of habituation, what you'll see is behaviors that have reached the habituation phase are resistant to extinction. They're resistant to any type of reinforcement or punishment. They're just habituated. And sometimes you find that they don't even look like they're pleasantly or enjoyed. They're just doing them, right? And we can all probably think about things in our own life that are just habits that even though we don't get rewarded for them, and even though that they might even be painful or harmful to us, we just keep doing them, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. So habits are not necessarily, they're not as easily manipulated, right, as others. So that's it. And this can happen at any time. It can happen with behaviors that we didn't condition too. That's the other thing about these conditioned responses could be environmentally conditioned. I didn't plan on them being conditioned, but my dog conditioned himself to barking at, the mailman or this or that or whatever. And so then I work really, really, really hard to make sure that it gets extinct, and then boom, it pops up again. And that's when, in my early career, that's what people were talking about the most. They were talking about the extinction of a behavior that you were trying to fix. We'd like to make barking in the kennel or barking in your crate or some things like that, or chewing on some furniture or something. We'd like to extinct that. How do we make that extinct? And that was like really popular and like what people were talking about for a while. But what I found is that, over the course of I've been doing this for 20 years, that both things are just as likely to be extinct in terms of, our clients are gonna absolutely like extinct their behaviors themselves. They're not gonna reward them, they're not gonna correct them, and they always start to fall. And you're also gonna see it the other way. You're gonna see, hey man, we worked really hard to get this behavior to go away, and it pops back up. Sometimes even when, you've been doing everything right. So, and if you guys, again, if you know addicts or alcoholics, you have any of those people in your life, then this is a very similar situation to that. And this spontaneous relapse, spontaneous recovery, doesn't necessarily mean that that they do the action. So it doesn't mean they get the US. They're just having the UR. They're just doing the CR. They're just having the conditioned response. Okay? So this happened to me the other day, which is, I told Emily about this. Driving down the road, and I was like, I want to listen to some Wu-Tang, okay? Haven't listened to Wu-Tang in a while, and I turned it on, and I was like, man, I haven't heard this in a long time. Bring the ruckus, okay? And immediately, I'm like, have a triggered thought to be like, I'm like thinking I'm on the back porch of my friend's house, at his mom's house, like smoking a blunt, right? It happened so quick. And I was like, and I've been sober for 13 years, right? Haven't done that. And it's not, I didn't do it, but I had the response. It happened in my head. And I was like, man, have I not even I don't think I may not have heard that song in 15 years. And every time I was listening to Wu back in the day, I for sure was pairing that with marijuana, right? And next thing you know, after 13, 14 years, however long it's been, and it just, boom, just like that, right? But again, it doesn't mean that you have to act out on it. Same thing as the dog. It doesn't mean that they have to act out on it, but they could be triggered in that situation. Good? We having fun? Okay, let's play a game. All right, so this will be a little bit, let's play a game. Will be a little bit interactive, okay? And we'll need two volunteers. I'll tell you the rules before we get the volunteers, just so that you know if you want to be involved or not, okay? So what we're gonna do is the first round is gonna be with markers yes and good. You're gonna be able to give direction to this volunteer. The volunteer is gonna go out in the hallway, and we're gonna hide something. One of you is gonna have something that's hidden, okay? And so the person will have to come in, and they're gonna have to find the item with only hearing the words yes or the words good from me or whoever else is going to participate in that, right? The second participant will be able to use the word no. Okay? So, but the same game. So, who we want to have the volunteers here?
I'll jump in.
All right, Deborah, Cameron. Okay, all right. So, you guys are both going to participate. Awesome. So, we can do one at a time. All right, so who wants to go first? You said first. All right, Deb, you're just going to go right outside for a moment, and we're going to hide. I'm going to show you. Hold on, Deb. We're hiding this, okay? All right, go ahead. Get on out of here.
Where do you want to stay?
Close that door. Okay, where should we hide this? Who's gonna hide it and where? Well, somebody's gotta have it. Somebody out here. She's gonna go up to somebody. Like, yeah. Well, we could hide it. I mean, we could hide it up there. You wanna hide it up there? Here, Victoria. Okay, so Victoria has it. All right, so here's the deal. Anybody can say, it's like hot and cold game, right? All right, but I'm gonna have her come in and start right here, and we give her the opportunity. If she goes over here, you could say, good, you're going near a person, or you could just wait. But you can't say no, and you can't give her any other clues. So you have to actively try and find out where that is. So
We're saying yes or good.
that's all. So you say, so good means you're getting close. Yes means you're close. All right, so come on over here with me. All right, here's your job. You're a drug dog, okay? And you're gonna find the spoon out there. And when you hear the word good, it means that you're doing a good job and keep doing what you're doing. If you hear the word yes, it means that you have found the spoon. So, and my hint is that the spoon is in this general area. Okay. All right. So, all right. Now, so you gotta go find it, and anyone can tell you good, and anyone can tell you yes if you happen to find it. And we should time this, by the way. There you go. All right. Not bad. Good job. Okay. All right. Cameron. So that, okay, it took about 30 seconds. Not bad. All right. Cameron goes out. Okay. So we're going to, our goal here is, if it could be a little bit harder, that would be cool, but I don't know how we could possibly make it harder since it's a really simple game, right? Any ideas? Oh, you want to take it? Oh, you're going to hide it away. You hide it away. Okay, so we're going to make it a more difficult. Oh, no, here. Put it behind that. Okay, so here's the deal. And I'll tell Cameron that it's going to be a little bit more difficult and that there are other things in play. All right, so it's a slightly more difficult game now, all right? And that's because we have the additional cue that we can tell you when you're wrong, all right? So anyone can give the clues, the cues, right? So the signal is no if you're going the wrong direction. The signal is good if you're going the right direction. And if you're within, 1 foot, we'll say yes. All right? Does that sound good? All right. Go get them. Good. 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 Good.
Yes.
There you go. Yep. Yeah. You got it. All right. Okay. So, a more complex task, I think, because it was hidden and it wasn't with a person, and you got it done in like 13 seconds. So half the time. Right? Why is that relevant?
You can keep the spoon.
Because you used the negative.
Why? A negative? Yeah, well, next month is operant conditioning. We'll talk about all these, okay? Operant conditioning will be really fun for me. But the one after that, I'm even more excited about, actually. Well, the one after that's electronic collar. The reason I'm really excited about it is because I get to shock everybody. So that'll be fun, okay? And myself, don't worry, let's do. Cam's gonna shock me at level 100 for like, no, way longer than that. Oh yeah, we're gonna time it out. We're gonna time that collar out, yeah. Well, so Dr. Hilliard does it, and I was like, well, if he does it, I gotta be able to do it. He does it, his arm is like, he's like, look. I'm like, what? I'm like, does that hurt? Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, he's an interesting character. So that's obviously it's a game you can play with anybody. If you have clients or whatever, you can kind of help them to figure it out, or staff or whatever. So anyway, and we can do various, make it more and more complex. If you have people that are like super into that game, and if we were doing like a full day seminar, we could do activities that had multiple steps. And you'd be like, here's a bucket. I want you to take the bucket and put it on top of this chair. And then I want you to go over here with this jug and fill it with water. And you can do all that stuff and just shape it with markers, as long as the person that's involved is actively trying to do more stuff. And the trick there is that the same thing is true with dogs. If they're really active and they keep trying to do different things, you can add more and more and more complexities to their behaviors, right? All right, so my favorite marker is in there. Does anybody know what my favorite marker is? Where's yes? Is yes in there? It's not in there. What's my favorite marker? Shit! No. If you were consistent enough, every time you drop your treat pouch, you said, shit. And your dog's like, oh, shit, and starts looking around on the ground. It's like, what happened? Okay, so what is marker training? Most people, anybody who's spent time around me knows about it. That being said, markers are visual, tactile, or auditory cues. That's an interesting concept there, because a lot of times people just think it's a clicker. It's just this one thing. But in the studies that we're talking about, and in these studies like throughout many years, they also used a lot of lights. So just use a bright red light or yellow light or this or that, and there are a lot of studies where they talk about the salience, like how relevant each cue is to an animal. And they have to sometimes, the yellow light didn't work. They couldn't tell the difference between the yellow light and the green light. And there's like a lot of these I think, really cool. Of course, this is coming from somebody who reads studies at like 12 o'clock at night just because it's fun to me, right? My wife's watching like Gossip Girl reruns, and I'm like reading scientific papers. So that's stuff you all know, right? The most important thing is that you have something that tells the dog when they did something right, when they did something wrong. And there can be many, many versions of both. So what kind of markers does everyone use in their training? Is everyone using markers in their training? Yeah? Okay. What are we using? All right, you guys work for me. All right, I'll give you the yes, okay? Anybody else? Use okay. Whoa, I can write. Sometimes. What else?
I use take for.
What is it?
Take.
Take? What's that mean?
It's the same as yes or.
Okay, got it. Terminal bridge. Okay. Hand signals. I like it. Cool. So give me an example. Okay.
I've been told can be good or bad, but I didn't want to not be able to communicate as.
Yeah, so a hand signal for a behavior could possibly be a marker, or it could just be like a cue, right? So like a command. So if this means you have to sit, I'm making you sit. But if this meant food or pain, right? Those would be more, that's more along the lines of like a marker, right? So a lot of times and you probably have one that you do for that too. We do train a good amount of deaf dogs here, and we have like a couple of different things that we use. So good is a marker that we use that means keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to bring you a reward. Okay, so we call it like a duration cue, right? Or a keep going signal, some people call it. All right, so if I say good, the reward's coming to you. With a deaf dog, oftentimes we use thumbs up, right? And with I call welcome in, the gesture that I do with a dog for a yes or for a release, if they are deaf, is I call it welcome in. So I just go. I'm showing them the hand signal for the food. They know food's there. I see the hand signal. I go to the food. I get the food, right? If I follow the hand, I get the food. So they learn, and many of our dogs are learning that anyway, like prior to their understanding, because physical cues are more salient. So dogs are more interested in their physical cue than they are the auditory cue initially. That when we're doing this, the dog actually picks up on the hand signal before they pick up on the word. They're like, yeah, there's food there, got it. And then they're like, why do you keep saying that word? Right? All right, so we use yes to mean come get the reward over here. Good means I'm bringing the reward to you. Means, what does it mean to you?
I mean, I use it like when they do something wrong, like if they don't do the marker, they don't complete the task.
They don't do the command.
Yeah.
Then you say the word
And then we start over.
Okay, but so if is going to be a conditioned stimulus, what is the response associated with it that your dog should have in terms of like, should your dog think that it means you're getting a punishment? Does it mean you're not getting a reward? You're not getting a reward, right? So a non-reinforcement signal, right? Or potentially even a negative punishment signal. Like I'm asking you to sit, you don't sit, and I take the food away. You don't get the food. You didn't do it, right? Yeah. Or I'm petting my puppy, and they jump up on me, and I say, I take my hands away, right? You use it like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to condition that in the same way as the others, right? So those are important ones to build. I use as well in that way. And it's most valuable to me with puppies and taking away, using that negative punishment. I'm taking something away that they like as a punishment, because I'm not like, I don't have a collar on my little 6-week-old puppy, whatever, and if he's jumping on me, I just be like, right? So there's benefits to all these. Clickers are probably they were the first. And one of the things that is interesting is it's not exactly relevant to this slide, but if the dog hasn't heard the sound before, it's conditioned faster. And if the dog has heard the sound in context without the US, it's conditioned slower. So you can really easily, like if you just like sometimes the light is on, right? Sometimes the red light is on, and you're not there to even give them food. It's like it gets tricky. That's why the clicker is sometimes is like even more valuable than our verbal markers, because it only happens at that one. That's the only time. And even around the house, if you hear noises, this, that, feet, stomp, it's not exactly the same sound, right? So the dog doesn't have to learn a lot about like context. They're just like, sound, got it. I know that sound, and it's really charged up. Okay. Okay. Anything you want can be a marker, right? I use a variety of them, and I think I can show you some. Couché. There's he's 12 years old, but he still likes to party. All right. So I'll show you what we call differentiation between markers. Differentiation is basically the understanding that different cues can elicit a different response in a dog, right? And how we could utilize that for in obedience training. Now, for me, I've trained competitively and compete with this dog, and so for me, there's certain behaviors that are super, super valuable. One of those is heeling. You'll see a lot of people that are doing like competitive bite work and competitive obedience. We really focused on their heeling. So I'll show you a little demo of why we place our rewards in different places. Heel. So the first one that a lot of us use, everybody here mentioned it. Yes. So it means just come get the reward out of my hand. Rhino out, heel. Yes. Rhino out, heel. Yes. Rhino out, heel. All right, so dog has that understanding. So he's been playing with this toy in my left hand, correct? Heel. And he knows that toy is there. Behind. Yes. So in order to differentiate, out, heel. Behind. Yes. Good boy. Oh. Oh. Good boy. Out. Heel. Get it. Good boy. So get it means get the toy on the ground. It's the exact same toy. Rhino out. Heel. Get it. Out. Heel. Behind. So how do we create in our dog? What do you think, Deb? You like it? It looks good? Rhino out. Heel. Couché. Rest. And why might it be relevant? Okay? So sometimes I may want to do something that we consider to be incompatible. Incompatible rewards, and thinking my dog wants to come forward to me because I have this reward. Well, what if I put the reward behind him so that he doesn't creep forward, right? So I can have it in my hand, and if I say Y-E, I can't even say the other letter because if I say that, he'll want to come to it, right? But if I say, get it, go backward. Out, couché. Back, 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 couché. Rest. He's got the reward back behind him. You can say, yes. Good boy. Out. Come. Back, couché. Rest. So when we're doing positions in Mondio ring, which is the sport that we competed in, the dog's not allowed to creep forward. So we don't want the dog to even gain like 1 inch in space. So the way that we reward the dog is they go backwards to get the reward. If you do that too many times, then the dog starts to stand crooked. And I got to tell you that we haven't done this in, I don't know, probably 5 years, but we'll see how he does. Dabu. Asi. So he came forward a bit there. Couché. Back, back, couché. Dabu. Asi. Get it. Good boy. That's a good boy. You're good. Get it. All right, did I forget any markers? Out. Heel. I think we did them. Good. Good. Good's hard with a toy. Good's hard with a toy. Here's couché, rest. Here's another behavior. Hey, couché. Good boy. This is a formal retrieve. Okay? So an informal retrieve. Get it. Good job, buddy. He wants to bring it back to me. He knows we're going to play. Right? Out. Get it. And so he's always just bouncing back to me, and we create that from a young dog, right? Out. Good boy. Assy, rest. Now, if I take another item, okay, that this just like doesn't provide a ton of value to my dog because I don't play tug with this item, right? This is a retrieve item. Rest. A little tricky there. Apport. And what I'm looking for is a finish. Good. Oh, you thought I was going to give it. Apport. Good. 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 So that's where your good comes in. Good. Out. Yes. Good boy. Good job, buddy. Good. Rhino out. A pied. Assy. Rest. We'll put it in a better location for him. Apport. Good. Yes. Good boy. So there's context involved here, right? So when he's in a front like that, out, come, good boy. And I say Y-E-S, and he knows, yes, right? He knows where the reward is going to be for that. Out, couché, rest. All right, I think he's had enough. He's going to get, hey. Oh, this good boy, yeah. You're very good. Oh, Rhino out. Good. Anything else with this dog? No? You're a good boy. Yeah. Good. Okay, so the next slide is super funky. Okay? The next slide is super funky. I've been training dogs for 20 years. And I just learned about this. It's a little bit sad. Okay? A little sad that I didn't know about this before because it is pervasive throughout everything that we do. Absolutely. As dog trainers and just as human beings in the world, right? When you know this stuff, when you know classical conditioning and you know operant conditioning, you walk around just like, that's what this is. That's what this is. That's negative reinforcement. That's conditioning. That's, everything is becomes an expression of that to me in the whole world. So now I have a new category of confusing items that I can throw at everybody. All right. So Pavlovian inhibition is, again, it's a newer topic for me because I only learned about it at Canology, right? But I think that it's amazingly pervasive throughout everything that we do, right? And we'll get into exactly how and why. But you see there's a new symbol here. And the new symbol is a cell phone. We'll talk about why that is present there. All right. You have CS plus and CS minus here, all right? So CS plus is going to be associated with the presence of a US. So CS plus means there will be food, okay? CS minus means there will not be food. The idea is, how do we make nothing? This means nothing. How do we make that psychologically meaningful? So how do I make the presence of nothing salient to the dog? The answer is that there has to be an expectation of the food as a precondition. So my dog thinks that there is going to be a reward here, but there's not. He has to think there's going to be a reward there in order for me to condition his understanding that there is no reward. Does that make sense? Kinda. And I've been thinking this for a long time, and I've understood the idea. And what this is, in one word, context. Okay? If this, then this. Okay? If my dad's wearing a red shirt, we are not going on a walk. Right? Something simple. If my dad doesn't have his treat pouch on, then the words he say doesn't matter. Right? So why is a cell phone the signal, right? Or why is there a cell phone for the signal? CS minus. And so imagine that we're using a verbal cue. There's a couple reasons why the cell phone may be. But let's say that we're using a verbal signal like the word yes. Okay? So I'm on the phone. I just ordered a cheesesteak. The guy reads it back to me. He says, "You want lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, provolone cheese?" And I say, "Yes." My dog doesn't jump up looking for a reward off the couch, right? So there's context involved. My dog is not going to learn that every single yes equals a reward if yes happens sometimes, paired with me being like this, and he knows, oh, if he's like that, don't listen. He's not even talking to you, right? Huge, though, because this is a visual representation. Remember, this line means on, right? So your CS is on. There's your yes, or your click, click, click. There's CS minus is not on. The US is present. You get food, all right? If I say yes and I'm not on the phone, you get food. I say yes, I'm on the phone, you get no food. You can condition these on purpose, and you can condition them by accident. And your clients will do both, right? Or the people that you're talking to will do both, and you'll do both by accident too. And you won't realize that you've been giving your dog cues that say, I am going to give you a reward. And then all of a sudden, that cue isn't there, and the dog says, he's not giving me a reward, right? So how do we put ourselves in a position to do this purposefully, right? Can you think of some other situations that this happens on purpose or by accident? 100%. If your dog's in the crate, then what? Right. Yep. So if my dog's in his crate and I'm training another dog outside, then he shouldn't have the same response. He shouldn't be sitting in there just like drooling and whatever, right? Now, some dogs do, Alexis. Some dogs, when I'm playing nearby the crate and I'm playing with a toy, right? That dog all of a sudden acts like he's going to get the toy. Now, why would that happen? Speak up.
The toy's just really high value.
Okay, what else?
Used to getting it every time.
Maybe. Toys high value, we'll call that strongly acquired. Okay? The dog has a really salient cue, and the feeling for this toy is so high, okay, and hasn't had enough repetitions to incur inhibition, right? So because I don't play next to the crate 10 hours a day, and the dog has such a high desire for the item, then he doesn't get that, right? And there are dogs that are gonna have that all the time. You're gonna see that, right? Where if I have there's some bite work style dogs, so you can't do bite work with the dog in a crate nearby. Like the dog's going nuts, like trying to blast out of the kennel and like biting it and like barking and freaking out, right? So it's not that this is gonna happen all the time, but it could happen, right? And in a lower state of arousal, the dog does understand, your dog does understand that she's not gonna get a reward, like a food reward when you're training dogs in here, because you're doing that all day. But every time you play with the toy, there's this opportunity, she's gonna jump or get excited or whatever. And that's just a representation of how excited the dog is for the item, and that we haven't done enough inhibiting if we wanted to inhibit it. Okay, so crate for sure. Anything else?
I don't know if it would fall in, but I have one who like, I have to spell VET, because if she hears the word vet, she goes straight to the back door and sits there because she wants to go.
She wants to go.
Yeah. Does that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you're saying that you have a cue that the dog has learned. So the dog has learned that the word vet means we're going somewhere, right? But that's not exactly, you haven't inhibited that. Like if you said we're going to the vet, but every time you said that, you didn't go to the vet because you said like, you'd have to set up a scenario like, when I'm wearing my red shirt, we are not going to the vet, you know? So like you put on a red shirt and you come downstairs and you're like, we're going to the vet, and then you just don't go, right? And then every time you wear your red shirt, that's what you say. And then your dog realizes, oh, she's wearing the red shirt, and you say, we're going to the vet. And she's like, psh, bullshit. And she's like, I'm gonna just chew on my bone. Right? She's like, no, we're not.
Could body movement be a CS negative for something like a back pedal when you're using or recall, but a back pedal doesn't necessarily mean that.
For the dog or for you? Who's moving backward?
You.
You are moving backward. Okay, what are you saying?
So paired with the recall command, it elicits a reward, but without the recall command.
So you're saying if you walk backwards
Yeah.
and you don't give a reward, is that a like a CS minus condition stimulus? I mean, well, maybe, but you'd have to really condition that on purpose. Versus you're saying you came, but if I go backward, you don't get the reward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that would be tricky. But like, if really this goes to not commands, but we're just talking about markers. So it has to be, because it has to be classically conditioned, because you have to have the expectation there for it to work at all. So a lot of our commands aren't actually classically conditioned, right? They seem to be able to be, in certain situations, excitatory in nature. So the dog hears the command and they've paired it so many times with high arousal activities that they do get into like a high arousal state. Like when I pull Rhino in and I tell him to heel, and he's like, gets all excited, he starts whining and everything, right? So then has heel become a classically conditioned marker? Not exactly. He just knows that it's a state that's so much more likely to get a reward that he's been conditioned to a state of arousal in that command. But if I said to him, for example, I would have to counter condition that, which is different than inhibitory conditioning. But Pavlovian inhibition he also did a ton of studies on this. People just don't talk about them, right? And so these are really fun, like, studies to read up on. I mean, I think they're fun. But the studies that they did were almost always light and tone, and then various types of conditioning. I mean, various timings of conditioning. So a light would go on, and then the tone would happen, and then no food. And then a light would go on, and no tone would happen, and then there would be food. And then vice versa, right? So what you would find, say, working with a client, oftentimes it's that they're using the words, they're using markers, or doing things like that, and they're not providing the reinforcement. But the dog, and oftentimes, how many people have heard this? Like, oh, if I just bring out the food, he's perfect, right? Everybody says that. Like, oh, if I just carry food around with me all the time, he's perfect. I'm like, first of all, no, you're lying. You don't know what perfect looks like. And second of all, that's because now, first of all, your dog understands that the presence of the food means it's more likely he gets a reward. So you've done a bad job of hiding that to begin with, right? And also, then all you have to do to get perfect behavior is make the dog that you have think that you have food all the time. Which is like, okay, well that's easier. Just like have a little bit of food, right? And then I've often said to people, you don't need to have food all the time. Your dog needs to think you have food all the time. I don't need to have my tug all the time. The dog needs to think I have my tug all the time. It's just like so much more valuable. But when this happens, most of the time it's by accident. And in my experience, it happens by accident, and it's not good. We don't typically like it, right? Go ahead.
Can you clarify, like, so the way I'm like understand, because I'm not a trainer.
Yeah.
But like, to me, it sounds more like what you were saying earlier, like context. Because we had this dialogue earlier where we're told to teach the dog on your bed, and then at home it never works, but here it always works. I try to heal my dog in the neighborhood, doesn't always work. He did a beautiful job walking down this driveway because he was here, and it was like conditioned context.
Yeah.
And so for me, even for example, I'll say, okay, we're going hiking, and he's like super excited, but he knows if I don't bring my hiking shoes out or like all the other gear out, he's like, she's not going. And then, or that he knows like his stuff is out, then we're really going. But like, how do you differentiate like that inhibition versus like context?
So it's basically,
Or is it the same?
they're the same in a way,
Okay.
right? It's a more complex cue. That's all. It's just saying like, these two things mean no. This one thing means yes, right? But in your situation, what you're talking about sounds more like just straight conditioning, right? It's like classical conditioning, not inhibition. So when you bring out you don't even have to say we're going hiking.
Yeah.
If you bring out your shoes and your backpack and you're loading up the car and stuff, he's pumped,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to say we're going hiking. He's pumped because he knows that the cue, the signal, is actually visual. He's like, cool, I got it. So in order for there to be inhibition, let's say you wanted to teach your dog, you're not coming with me. I don't want you to get all excited by seeing my stuff. So you would have to show him that, you'd have to create a secondary cue. Like if I don't say we're going hiking, then you don't think we're going hiking, which would mean I bring out all my stuff and I put you in the crate and I leave for work, whatever it is, right? And you're like, oh, he'd be so sad. I saw your face. You were like, oh.
He was very sad.
Right, yeah, but
And I think indirectly he did learn, like if I would say, we are going hiking, like.
maybe. That seems a little rich. Do you think he knows pronouns, dude?
Maybe it's like your facial expression or like, I don't know, but yeah. But I thought that was really funny, that like, he gets it when he's like not invited.
Right, yeah, you're not invited. Yeah, it's tricky. I think a lot of times there are visual cues that are paired with it. If you like, they can tell you're not paying attention. They can tell that you're just like, they can tell you're not paying attention. And so, the CS could be something that they're doing. It could just be a conditioned stimulus. It's not necessarily a word. It could just be a situation that they're in. You'd be like, dude, I'm sitting by the door. Why aren't you rewarding me? And they're like, she's on her fucking phone. You know what I mean? I'm like, or like you're looking at you're on your laptop or whatever, like, and then maybe they have to do something to get your attention and whatever, right? But it's that they're inhibited from conditioning happening, not that the dog itself is inhibited like like suppressed. So the dog shouldn't be like sad. The dog should just not have been conditioned. It didn't get conditioned. There was a block there that stopped it from being conditioned, right? But I think, again, like super interesting. It's a little bit of a, not like a wonky concept, but it is like, it feels hard sometimes to wrap your head around. But when I heard about it, I was like, I literally wrote, I was like, mind blown. It's like, oh my God. I was like, it's all written down for me. Because it's something that our clients just do all the time. And like I said, I've been talking about the crate. I've been talking about my dog understanding context forever, and I didn't know why. I was like, well, this is why. Oh my God, this is it. So it's fun stuff for me to think about, talk about, work on. And I think that might be our last slide. Look at that. Yeah. What kind of questions we got? I did that an hour and 20. Not bad.
Yeah.
I did good. All right. Yeah.
Can you see your treat?
Yeah. Can I get a treat? Chocolate, preferably. All right. You got dark chocolate?
No, no.
Can you give an example of that has been done on accident that is a bad thing? Because you said
That mostly it happens by accident.
yeah.
So
Give an example.
yes, my example is almost always going to be with clients not taking the time to set up the training scenario so that they don't have something inhibiting there, right? And so if you create something by conditioning, so I put my, so if this one happens all the time for real. Like you're on the phone and you're saying, yeah, yes, no, yeah, I'm good, good. All right, yeah, that's good. You're saying that all the time on the phone.
Yeah.
And your dog is not like sitting there drooling, like responding. Or when you're saying no, your dog's not like, oh shit, oh God, right? Like it's like thinking like they're gonna get like whacked or something. No, that's not happening, right? It's just that they know that you're talking on the phone, right? So if they hear the cue when you're on the phone, it's not happening. That's when I think it's like the easiest thing to kind of like understand there, right? Because we've been talking about it like markers, but realistically, everything's conditioned, like in our entire life, right? So just like my thing about listening to the Wu-Tang, right? That's conditioned. There's other stuff that's conditioned. You hear a song, you smell something, you do it, right? Everything is conditioned. It's the simplest form of learning. You've paired these two things over and over and over and over again. And if they are paired, in some situation, there's also going to be inhibition. So, let's think of another one. So,
What about collars? Depending on what I'm doing, which show I'm going to, is what equipment that I put on the dog.
yes,
And I can see the moment that I put a harness on her, she knows we're going to scent work.
yep,
If I put a show collar on her, she knows we're going to the obedience ring.
yes. So I put this is a beautiful example. So I put my service dog harness on my dog, and now every time I go out the door and my dog jumps in the car and they're freaking pumped and they're standing in the back seat because they know we're going to the lake. And she's pumped and she's barking and she's like really excited. Awesome. I put my service dog harness on my dog. I put her in the car and she just goes and lays down in the back seat. Why? Because she knows we're just going out to the restaurant and probably she's going to sit under my feet and she's not going to the lake and there's nothing. So she's not having the conditioned response of getting pumped in the car because she knows it's not happening because she's wearing the vest. So in a situation like that, what you're talking about, the dogs certainly do get conditioned to their equipment. Absolutely, right? And a lot of times we run into problems with that when we're talking about using corrections and things like that. You're like, oh, the dog, same thing with the treat pouch. Oh, I have my treat pouch, my dog acts perfect. I put the pinch collar on, the dog's perfect. But all of a sudden, I don't have it on, dog's not doing very well, right? And you're like, well, is that because in a lot of situations, say the word no, right? If I only use the word no, so we're talking punishment here, right? So no, pop, correction, no, pop, correction. If I only use the word no, give a pop correction when my dog has their pinch collar on, and then I say no to my dog, and my dog's like, oh, my pinch collar on. They've inhibited the conditioning was inhibited, right? Because the dog knows, doesn't even have to know it. The dog understands that if they don't have the collar on, there's no risk of a correction, right? And so that's why trial prepping dogs is a huge conversation. How do you get your dog ready for trial when they're not going to have any equipment? Rhino competed for an hour, competed for 40 minutes on the field with no corrections, no rewards, no collar, no leash. No tug, no nothing. All right, this is my dog. He has to go out, run 100 yards down, meters. They do everything in meters because they're French, you know. So run down, get a bite, come back to me on a whistle, stay with me, go do other stuff, scent discrimination, 7 different bites, jump over a 9-foot wall, whatever, right, 8-foot wall, with no rewards or corrections. There's a huge part of this, which is like, how do we get our dogs to stop relying so much on rewards or corrections, right?
That goes back to your relationship with your dog.
A big part of it's relationship, absolutely, but relationship is, in my opinion, a series of conditioned responses, right? So I've conditioned my dog to thinking that I'm really great and that I've always got the answers and I've always got the good stuff in my pocket and I always have the thunder in the other pocket, and, you know what I mean? Like I'm God, right? So that's it. And if the dog really believes that, you have a much higher likelihood of being successful on the field, for sure. And you know, I've been embarrassed on the field before, for sure. And yeah, oh yeah, no, I went to national championship in Utah and cried off the field, got off the field and cried, you know, because he got scared off a bite. Like, so he's going in for a long bite, and I think he was slow to get into the bite. It was just so much pressure. You're just like, and I'm just doing it for fun. I just want my dog to be successful, and I'm looking for the respect and adoration of my peers, and you know, I'm sitting there on the side like, you know, it's just the way it is. Anyway, so there's some probably conditioned stuff there for me too, right? Yeah. But trial prep becomes really important, and then you know that this is operant conditioning, but that punishment event for me, like that was it was a drastic event for me. I didn't say I don't want to compete anymore. I said I'm gonna be ready for the next one. You know what I mean? And then we did. It was ridiculous. This is a funny story, not conditioning related. What he was slow to bite at this. Actually, no, that was a different one. So the decoy in Mondio ring, the guy with the bite suit on, can basically scare the dog away with like a stick, and so like the dog has to run through the stick to come bite him. And he got scared off the stick a little bit, and he was really slow to come in and bite. So I said, I need to have him go over the stick and come up and bite upper body, and we got to really embolden him to do that. So we do that with, he's got a harness on and a bungee, and he's running out and pulling up at the last second, and the guy's like barely letting him get him, and he just gives him a shoulder or whatever it is, right? Months and months we're doing that. Over the top of the obstacle, over the top of the accessories, over the top of the stick, throwing stuff in his face, he's jumping up over, get to the next national championship. The next year we go to the national championship. He comes up over top of, bites the guy in the face. Yeah, bit him in the chin. Yeah, and so then we had to stand on the field for whatever 20 minutes. Dog's just laying there. Guy goes to the hospital, gets stitched up. New decoy comes on, and we did really poorly the rest of the thing. So I have not shown well at national championships historically, but I competed in two. Anyway, very well local competitions, but never did well at nationals. Anyway,